this session. And we also have Bob Cerns joining us, which is really fantastic. So we'll wait for him to just log in. Jackie, over to you, and we look forward to this session. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, I think there seem to be some technical mix-up at the beginning. So there are actually two Jackie Tao accounts, and the other Jackie Tao account belongs to Mr. Rudik, who will be talking about his book on Bruce Trail later. Okay, so let me begin. And hello, everyone. I am the real Jackie, and I'm honored to be here today to talk about my organization and the project we have been working on recently. So this is an online book fair project. And I think with the technical mix-up at the beginning of the meeting, it really shows that how international visits and exchanges have taken a new and somehow unfamiliar form. And we are still trying to get used to the new tradition, new tendencies in this uncertain era. Okay. So this is a brief outline of the talk tonight. So I will talk about my organization first and briefly introduce the book fair project. And also I would like to recommend some trail readings here in Taiwan. And then I will invite Mr. Rudik to talk about his book. And finally, there's a bonus project. And we would also like to hear from the audience, whether there are some book trail reads that you would like to recommend, or you have some questions about the talk tonight. Actually, it's night here in Taiwan, so tonight. Okay, so let me just jump right in. Okay, for those of you who don't know where Taiwan is, we're actually an island in the West Pacific area, and we are between the Philippines and Japan. The size of Taiwan is actually similar to that of Switzerland, just to give you a perspective. So we aren't actually a very big place. It's a small island. And TMI Trail, that is the abbreviation of Taiwan Thousand Miles Trail Association, actually started in 2006. And the vision is to create a bicycle and pedestrian friendly environment. So we're trying to find a trail network that could allow cyclists and pedestrians to walk freely and away from the busy traffic. So we spent 4 years walking around the island, investigating and exploring around to locate and to investigate, to explore the trails. So after 4 years, we have identified the round island trail map, and then we introduced eco-craft trail methods to help maintain and to preserve the trails. Okay, so in 2016, we initiated the National Greenway campaign, and I think it's worth mentioning that here in Taiwan, most of the trails are actually managed by the government. So to launch such a campaign requires intensive conversation and partnership, both with the local and the central government. And here is the result so far. And you can also refer to the map on the right-hand side as I'm talking about the trails here. In the northeastern part of Taiwan, there is Tam Sui Kavalan trails. There are actually 3 lines, if you can see them, and they are left blank. And then in the middle part of Taiwan, we have Ragnu Selu trails. In the southern part of Taiwan, we have Mountain to Sea Greenway. Besides the 3 established trails, we also have 3 more national greenways on the way. We are still promoting and still advocating for these amazing trails to be established and recognized. So let me show you some pictures about the trails. So the first one is Tam Sui Kavalan trails. I think some of you have seen the video of the Tam Sui Kavalan trails in the 2018 World Trails Film Festival. And then this is Ragnu Selu trails. This is actually a road of conflict and reconciliation between the local Hakka people and the indigenous people in the mountains. And you can also see that here's a picture from 2018, where 2018, I think it's 2018, where we have established a friendship trail program with Juju Olay. And finally, here's Mountain to Sea Greenway. This is the Taiwan version of it. This is a wonderful trail that takes you from the sea level all the way to the highest peak in the Northeast Asia, which is Mount Jade, about 4,000 meters high. And along the way, you can also see some indigenous Zhou people and their villages. So these are the three national greenways, and I'm just going to talk about the online book fair project here. I think we could all agree that it's been a really difficult 2 years for all of us, with all the international visits and exchanges restricted, and it has also become very difficult for trail lovers around the world to actually visit and see the amazing trails abroad. And because of this, we launched this book fair project because we believe that reading actually takes us to break the confines of space and time and allows us to experience the trails with our imagination and through books. Okay, so another goal we have in mind is to develop a book series on trails. We have some successful mountain climbing readings here in Taiwan, but we think that the psychological exploration and philosophical depth of trail readings is actually quite different from those of the mountain climbing books. But how different? I need to read more to tell you about that. But I think if you have read some amazing trail reads, I think you can see the difference quite clearly. And our final goal of this book fair project is to warm up for the upcoming first Asia Trails Conference, which will be held in 2022 from November 17th to the 21st. So we partner up with a local book review organization called Open Book, and the project will be released in, I think, late October. Okay, so with the help of our international trails community, we asked them to recommend some cultural and philosophical writings on trails, and we asked them not to introduce guidebooks because we want to introduce the cultural aspect of these trails and the trekking culture that these countries have. And we're also looking for the books that haven't been translated or haven't been published in Taiwan, because as I mentioned earlier, we're also hoping to initiate a new book series, a new series on trails. Okay, so here's the book list we have compiled so far. This might not be a very long list, but I think we hope that the readers here here in Taiwan could actually appreciate the efforts and the variety of these books we are going to introduce. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll have Mr. Rudik talk about his book later. So I will talk about the books from Cultural Roots Society, the one on Appalachian trails, and also the one recommended by MPO Miari. Beside the books, I think from the chart you can also see that we're trying to aside from the books, we're also trying to recommend or to introduce to the readers the organizations and the trails, because we would all agree that in order to maintain or to establish a long distance trail or trails, it actually takes a very dedicated and very devoted person and organization to help maintain this trail. So we are taking this opportunity to introduce the amazing organizations and the amazing people that are working hard in the community. And so we hope to introduce to them the books, the organizations, and also the people working on the trails. Okay, so let me briefly talk about these three books. The first one on the left-hand side is recommended by Cultural Roots Society. I'm not sure if they're online today because they told me that they are in the field recently, so they might not be able to attend tonight. But I would actually like to hear more about this. This is actually a in-depth archaeological exploration of the Lycian area, which is really fascinating because I haven't been to Turkey myself, but I think this book actually provides a perspective into the famous the Lycian way to our readers here in Taiwan. And also in the middle, we have Tango Roots, which is a very good book on the struggles, the political struggles, and also the I think the development behind the establishment of the Appalachian trails. And finally, on the right-hand side, we have a book in Japanese. Sorry that I actually don't speak Japanese, and I couldn't read the book title to you. But this book is actually written by a famous, I think he's a historical novelist called, let me check his name, is Ryoto Shiba. He's as I said earlier, he's a famous historical novelist in Asia. And this is actually a travel journal of his, traveling in the Totori area, which is the area where MPO Miyari works in. So these are the 3 books we have compiled so far, and we're going to introduce these books along with Mr. Rudick's Bruce Trail End to End to our readers. And then we are also trying to look for, or we have also been looking for these themes and these subjects, such as we're really fascinated by the astrology developed in Germany. And also we would like to introduce the concept of national trust in Taiwan, because some of the organizations here in Taiwan have been promoting this idea, but it haven't been well received. And we are also looking for readings such as Trails and the Indigenous People, but we haven't, sadly, we haven't heard much response. So if anyone from the audience could recommend some of these books, please contact me after the talk. Thank you very much. Okay, so these are the books. These are the books that we collected from the global Trails community. And okay, sorry. Aside from talking about books, talking about new books, we are also trying to review the books that have already published here in Taiwan. So in this part of the talk, I want to talk about some of the books that were written in Mandarin, and hopefully one day you can these books could be translated and published in your country. But before I go into the books, I think there are 2 themes that could allow people to more understand Taiwan and also the trekking culture we may bring forth. And the first part is the geopolitics in the Pacific. And as you can see from the map here, Taiwan, Japan, and also the Jeju Island, which is just below South Korea, and we are actually all chains of islands. And it's quite difficult to imagine how an island could develop the idea of a long distance trail. So supposedly it's an imported idea. Historically this concept take us back to the, I think, the 16th or 17th century, when the Western travelers would occasionally or accidentally stop by these islands, and they would leave. They would stay here and leave their legacies, and we will have different cultural heritages from these different countries and cultures. Okay, also, as you can, islands are surrounded by oceans, and ocean may act as an hindrance at first glance because we are surrounded and we couldn't go anywhere. But with the proper equipment or the proper tools, we can actually travel from the island to all the world. So ocean acts as a hindrance and also as a beginning to explore the world. And I think this harks back to the concept of some imported ideas from the West, and then we cultivated, we add some local colors, and also we add some local context to these imported ideas, and then it became our own, and then we make it a national thing. So the first author I want to introduce to you is Liu Kexiang. He's a prolific author on nature writing and walking. And his Formosa Grand Journeys, revised in 2015, is actually one of the earliest books that introduces the Western explorers' journeys here in Taiwan. Along the national greenways I mentioned earlier, the Ragnu Selu Trail or Tamsui Kavalan trails, they are all we can all see the footsteps of Western travelers. And Liu Kexiang is one of the first to introduce and to systematically collect and translate these journeys and their journals to the readers in Taiwan. Okay, and the other book I want to introduce is Xu Mingqian's On the Appalachian Trail, A Journey of Learning from the Mountains. Actually, she is our Deputy Chief Officer here in TMI Trail, and I'm not sure if she's online today. Maybe she can introduce her book later. She writes about her 4 months volunteer experience on the Appalachian trails. And she also brings back the methods and thinkings of eco-craft trail systems and methods. And so this actually laid the foundation to our later works at our organization. And after reading this, I think this is a great book because you can actually see how she appreciates the land she lives in, and that actually provides a hands-on perspective and hands-on method to how to maintain or how to preserve the trails that we are always using. But because eco-craft trail is actually a quite new idea here in Taiwan, we have only been developing it for about 10 to 15 years. So the people are still getting used to it, and we are really we have received a lot of readers after reading this book. They think they have changed their perspective on how to use the trails and how to maintain trails, because as I mentioned, the trails in Taiwan are actually managed by the government, and people seem to believe that once the trail is paved with concrete, it's a good trail. It means the government is doing something for the safety and for the maintenance of the trail. But this is not the case, because it actually destroys the natural beauty of it. So the eco-craft trail idea actually renovates how people think about trail conservation and trail maintenance. Okay, so the second theme I want to talk about is Taiwan and Austronesian languages. According to the scholars, Taiwan is the origin and also the northern boundaries of Austronesian languages. Austronesian languages is actually considered, Austronesian people is considered to be the ancestors of the Taiwanese indigenous people and all the indigenous people in this orange and yellow area. So it means that Taiwan is rich in indigenous culture. We have about 13 mountain indigenous groups, and there are many who live in the flatlands that are not yet recognized by the government. So Taiwan is very rich in these indigenous cultures. And as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 more national greenways on the way, and Austronesian National Greenway is one of them. And you can see that these trails actually displays another new and another aspect or another view of the trails that wasn't seen in the previous 3 national greenways I introduced. The colors and the costumes and the buildings are just different from what we see in the earlier ones. And also along the way, you can see the stone tablets that they use to build houses and also to build the trails. These are actually work of art, and we have the honor of working with some experts, some wise people maintaining the trails in their own indigenous tribes, and we actually learn a lot from them. And the authors I would like to introduce today is Xu Ruling and Yang Nanjun, and they are both expert mountain climbers, and they are, let me take a look. They are enthusiasts on ancient trails and indigenous cultures. They have collaborated with the Forestry Bureau for about 10 to 15 years in investigating all the indigenous trails along around Taiwan and have written about 10 books about indigenous culture and these indigenous trails. But their books are maybe a little bit scholarly, so I didn't provide the names of their books. So just to let you know that these are really amazing authors working on these indigenous topics and indigenous ideas. Okay, so I think that's the part I want to talk about. Maybe we can turn the microphone to Jackie and Mr. Rudik to talk about his book.
Great. Thank you very much, Jackie. And I would like to take an opportunity to introduce Nick. So my name is Jackie Randall. I'm the Director of Organizational Resources for the Bruce Trail Conservancy. Just tell you a little bit about the Bruce Trail. The Bruce Trail is Canada's oldest and longest marked footpath. It's approximately 900 kilometers long and provides the only continuous access to the Niagara Escarpment, which is a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve, and is located in Ontario, Canada. The Bruce Trail runs all the way from Niagara in the south to Tobermory in the north and is explored by thousands of visitors each and every year. And at the Bruce Trail Conservancy, we secure the land that the Bruce Trail crosses, thereby creating that permanent path for the Bruce Trail. And we've been responsible for the preservation of over 16,000 acres of land. We add new protected land each and every year to the Bruce Trail Conservation Corridor. Now, Nick's book, The Bruce Trail End-to-End Niagara to Tobermory the Hard Way, caught my attention as it's a comprehensive account of his hike along the entire length of the Bruce Trail, including wonderful photos of his adventure. Nick is a retired professor of English and the author and editor of numerous books and articles. He lives in Dundas, Ontario, and spends much of his time hiking and exploring the Bruce Trail. And here's his book here. So over to you, Nick, for a little more about your book.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you to Jackie Dow and to TMI Trails for inviting me to take part in this. I'm afraid I don't have any fancy PowerPoint. I'm just going to tell you how this book came to be written. I retired about 5 years ago, and a longtime friend retired at the same time, and both he and I moved with our families to southern Ontario. And he was a senior civil servant and decided that he really wanted a new challenge in life during retirement. So he said, okay, Nick, why don't you and I do the Bruce Trail? The Bruce Trail actually runs very close to both our houses here in southern Ontario. We had no experience of long distance hiking, but it sounded like a plan to me. I said, well, okay, it's 900 kilometers. How long do you how long do you think it's going to take us to do it? He said about 3 years. In other words, we were going to do the hike incrementally, day hike by day hike, and take about 3 years to do a distance which you can drive in about 4.5 to 5 hours. The Bruce Trail, however, is not straight. It follows the Niagara Escarpment, as Jackie has just told us, and it is an extremely devious and often very challenging route. So so this is what we did. We did the Bruce Trail slowly over the course of 2.5 years. We're both senior citizens. We didn't try to push it. We averaged maybe about 12.5 kilometers per hike. Then, of course, 2 years into our trip, the pandemic hit. That caused big problems to begin with, because it meant that the trail was not necessarily accessible. So we had to wait until everybody realized that nobody was really going to get badly infected by COVID out on the Bruce Trail. It's not a very crowded trail, to say the least. And we managed to finish then last year in November. We hiked just about every month of the year except for January and February. And as I was hiking, I was producing a photo blog on my own website of each hike. I had started photo blogging when I retired and had a fairly popular photo blog about Dundas, the small town where I live and area. So I photo blogged the Bruce Trail and ended up with 72 different episodes, all of which you can read for free online. But then people who had followed my photo blog said to me something like, "Well, we really like this, but can you turn it into a book so we can kind of give it as a gift to our friends, fellow senior citizens who might be inspired to take on this crazy trip?" And I said, well, you know, my aim was to make it accessible to everybody through the photo blog, but in the end I was persuaded, and so I turned it into a book, which meant a great deal of editing. You can't have 72 episodes with, you know, each with 20, 30 photographs in it. In a book, the book would be 1,000 pages long. So the book is a kind of buffed up and extremely edited version of the trail from one end to the other, from Niagara, where the trail begins, not very far from the famous Niagara Falls, up to the tip of the Bruce Peninsula, which separates Lake Huron from Georgian Bay. This is not a book about me or my traveling companion. It's essentially a book about what we saw on the way. And we saw, of course, lots of things. I was brought up and have lived most of my life in cities, so I knew very little about the natural world. I tried to teach myself as we were going along, you know, what that plant was, what that fungus was. We met a number of interesting people on the way as well. So the book is essentially the things that we saw along the way and its significance. And it came to be very clear to me that the Bruce Trail, which is not a government organization, it's a private organization run by the Bruce Trail Conservancy, is really the only way of preserving this remarkable landscape of the Niagara Escarpment. Niagara Escarpment is the cliff that the waterfall falls over, but it runs for a couple of thousand kilometers through this part of North America. It looks like a steep cliff for the most part, and it has, well, it's a World Biosphere preserve. It has its own flora and fauna, but it is greatly endangered by suburbanization and by the quarrying industry, among other things. And really the only way of preserving it is to preserving it finally for future generations is to buy up the land that it sits on. And these days, that's what the Bruce Trail Conservancy is trying to do. It's a wonderful trail, a fairly famous trail in North America. As Jackie said, the longest way and oldest waymarked trail in Canada. And I can recommend it to anybody. If I, as an old person, can do it eventually, then I'm sure any of you younger folk can do it too. So that's basically my short introduction to how the book came to be written. I don't know if people have any questions, but I'll try to answer them if you do.
Thank you so much, Nick. That was a great account of how the book came to be, and a great plug for the Bruce Trail and the Bruce Trail Conservancy. So much appreciated. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask away.
Nick, I was wondering, did you then complete the entire trail, and about how many total days did that take?
It took 70 days. So yes, we did it incrementally. And the 70 days took over just about 2 years and 7 months altogether to complete. So because the end of the trail up in Tobermory is a long way from where we live, we drove up there and did, for example, 2 hikes in 2 days. But for the most part, we just did 1 hike over a week, or perhaps 1 hike over 2 weeks. We didn't realize, of course, when we started the trail that there was going to be a pandemic, and it was going to be a lot more difficult for us to do the trail. Like, for example, we had to try to find accommodation in the far north over there when most hotels and motels were closed for the pandemic. But we did manage in the end. We did not camp. We figure we're beyond the age of camping. We like to stay in comfort if we can. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yes, both questions. And I was just wondering too, when did the Bruce Trail become established? How far back does it go? To what year?
I believe in Jackie.
I can answer that one.
Okay.
So we were founded, the idea began in 1962, and we officially opened in 1967. So we just recently celebrated our 50th anniversary. In fact, we're coming up now to 55 years of being an established or trail organization. And I will say, to Nick's point, with the pandemic, we actually ended up closing the Bruce Trail for a short period of time and disallowed end-to-ends to actually be submitted or completed, because parts of the trail remained closed for quite a long amount of time, even after the trail reopened. And so that hampered his ability for a little while, I'm sure, to actually finish and get his end-to-end badge.
I think in the end we missed only about 20 kilometers of the trail, which remained closed for quite a long time. I think we did something like 890 kilometers, and the trail is now probably around 900 plus kilometers. But I should say that the book, the book is essentially a lot of color photographs like that, with each with a caption or text to them. So it's a great deal of photography as well as text, and the book is available on Amazon. At least it's available on Amazon in Canada. Yeah, I think it's available Amazon worldwide. But I, of course, will be happy to, if any of you have any questions, you can just, I guess, email me. And if you want to read the whole thing, it's all there online. The book has details about all that as well.
Okay, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Jackie, for the introduction. I think it's really great to have one of the authors to introduce his books, and I think it gives us a more in-depth perspective on how these books came to be, and actually shares his unique tracking experience with us, because I think age doesn't really matter, but actually I think it's fantastic to have this experience during the pandemic. Okay, so thank you, Nick, again, and thank you, Jackie, for the kind introduction. So I'm moving on to the end of my talk, And before I end, I think we have a bonus project that I would like to share with you. And that is our team went on a broadcast, I think earlier this week, and the host was really fascinated about this book fair project, and really wants to know more about how the international trail community works. So I would like to invite you to provide us with a 2-minute recording, which includes self-introduction, introduction of your organization, and please introduce one long-distance trail in your country, and also tell us what does trail maintenance and conservation means to you. And finally, provide us with a warm welcome for trail lovers in Taiwan. We will put this recording on air, and our team would add some introduction to complement this recording. And we hope that we could introduce more organizations and more fascinating trails to listeners and audience here in Taiwan. Okay, I would like to give a big thank you to Galileo and his team for orchestrating this trail talk, and for sending a short survey before the talk to know some of your favorite trail books. But sadly, there aren't many responses. So I'm hoping that we can get more response here on spot. And so we would like to hear from you to share your favorite trail books with us, perhaps provide some quotes, or tell us the reason why you love this book so much. And before I open the floor to you, I would like to just add that if you like to join the 2-minute recording project, and if you have further ideas or would like to give us some feedback on the book list, you can also email us or just contact us on Facebook. So that's my part, and Khalil, back to you.
Wow, Jackie. Well, thank you for a very stimulating and thought-provoking presentation from your side, and wonderful to hear from Nick on his experience of writing his book on the end-to-end of the Bruce Trail. I'm just curious if there are any other trail authors on our call who might have some words to share with us, just around what is the process around sometimes producing a book on trails, and in particular a book that isn't necessarily a guidebook or an itinerary of sorts, but a more philosophical or more historic type of book. So just wondering if there's anyone out there who has some words to maybe share with us. I'm just going through the list, and I can see there might be two. There's Sam Demas, who I think is working on a book on mountain huts, and Robert Stearns, I think you've got a book in the making. Have you got any thoughts to share with us around what it sometimes might take to get a trail book together?
Hi, Galileo. Yeah, in fact, I'm just getting started, so it's a lot of work, needless to say. I think it needs to come from a place of inspiration, like the speakers today. I was just really impressed with the wonderful comments. I think I'll have more to report about this. I've just begun writing, so I'm hoping by early spring to have a manuscript done. Island Press will be publishing, and it's more about establishing walking routes that are closely accessible from cities, surrounding cities and in cities. But anyway, I just am really impressed with what I heard so far, and I want to go hike the Bruce Trail, and I want to visit Taiwan too and take some of those hikes. So I think that's all I have to say right now, but there's more to come.
Thanks, Bob. That's great. And I guess between the lines here, the invitation is to walk some of the friendship trails that have been established through the World Trails Network, both the Bruce Trail and the Taiwan Thousand Mile Initiative. Is also, I see, a friendship trail with the Jejuale Trail, which you've also walked. So I think yes. There's, and maybe Nick, maybe now that you've done the Bruce Trail, there's some, I think you may have come across a number of friendship trails on that journey of yours that maybe piqued your interest. And maybe there's another book in you as well for some other trails. So yeah, just as Bob said, inspiration, I think, is the key. Anyone else want to share any thoughts around, or maybe questions for some of our authors in the few minutes we have? Yes, go for it, Sam.
Thank you. My partner and I have written a book recently called A Guide to Hut to Hut USA, a guide for hikers, bikers, and skiers. And it is in large part a guidebook, and so outside of the scope of what we're discussing. But it's also a guide to a concept that is not widely understood and appreciated in the United States, and that is what huts are, and huts on trails that create a hut system that support environmental pilgrimage, people who want to travel for days on end and immerse themselves in nature and know that at the end of the day, they have the most environmentally sound place to stay. As we learned in last month's World Trails Network, huts are by far the most effective way of minimizing the human impact of overnights in the backcountry. And so this book is a guide to 16 hut systems in the United States, but I think more importantly, it's a guide to the cultural phenomenon of the most ancient form of human architecture, the construction of very rustic, primitive structures that give you shelter from the storm, is now enjoying a renaissance in the modern era as a way to support recreation and increasingly environmental education and spiritual development. And I am convinced that huts are going to become infrastructure for hands-on conservation work to give the 80% of humanity that lives in suburban and urban areas an opportunity to spend a long time in nature, actually working to restore nature. And
well, thank you, Sam. That's fantastic. And I think folks can look out for your book, very much so. And maybe Nick, if you're not a camper any longer, as you mentioned, and looking for more comfort overnight, the huts are definitely a way to go. So maybe Sam's book will give you some ideas for trails in the United States. Anyone else on the call who's got some thoughts to share around trail books from your countries? I'm really curious on that one you introduced, Jackie, from the NPO Mirai in Japan. And I'm very curious if there is a translation to that. Do you know?
I don't think there's a translation here in Taiwan, but I'm not sure if they have translations in English, actually.
Okay, well, I think it's something to look out for. So I don't know if there's anyone on the call from NPO Mirai. Not sure. But yes, so everyone, please, I think, unless there are any questions we have or some thoughts we have on some trail books, please chime up. But alternatively, I did put a link in the chat. Please drop in on that survey any of your thoughts around great trail books that you've come across or that you are aware of, and that we can also start collating some resource around trail books. I think
Galileo,
yes, Robert.
Sorry, it's Bob here. I did have one quick observation that I'll share. As you know, we're putting together the next edition of Trails and Beyond magazine, and I've been volunteering as the editor. And one of the observations that I had, and I noticed at least one of the people in our group is authoring an article for us, but one of the observations I had, it would be wonderful to maybe begin to feature these books in the magazine. Maybe even somebody in this group wants to get together and become our book reviewer to have a section of the magazine. I'm just blown away just by what I heard this morning or this evening for those of you in the evening. So I just thought maybe I'd put that out there for people to think about. The next edition of the magazine, as I say, we're a volunteer group. Galileo will be doing the graphics. Hopefully within a couple months, we'll have it out. And but it would be wonderful maybe if somebody might want to pursue that.
Bob, I think that's a very fine idea, and I'm going to volunteer someone who might not be so keen to do it, but who's certainly got the expertise and experience. And Jackie Tao, you gave such a great presentation today, and I know you've read a lot of very well-known trail books. I've seen your bookshelf. How would you like to contribute a book review section for this upcoming issue? I think it would be a great idea if you've got some time.
That would be wonderful, Jackie.
And maybe we can talk about this after the conference call.
Okay.
This is how we volunteer people at WTN, just in case you wondered.
So on the spot, huh?
Very much on the spot. Well, I think that invitation that Bob has given is open to everyone. So if you do have a beautiful book that you have read and you'd like to share a review of it in some form, it doesn't have to be too technical, but you might just express your love of that book. We would happily publish it, Bob, if I'm hearing you correctly. So yes to that.
Yeah.
So maybe to wrap up briefly, I think this has been a fascinating session, and I certainly look forward to a follow-up on trail books. And please support the Thousand Mile Trail organization initiative in Taiwan with their upcoming book fair as part of the Asia Trails Conference. And the Asia Trails Conference is happening just a week after or 2 weeks after the end of the World Trails Conference. So if you are planning to be in Nepal in October next year, make a plan to carry on your trail adventure to Taiwan and attend the Asian Trail Conference as well, which I'm sure will be stimulating and amazing. Taiwan looks like a very exciting destination to go and explore trails, particularly given the rich indigenous cultures that are still present on the island. So certainly something to explore. So a huge thank you from the World Trails Network team and the Trails and the Trails Talk series. We look forward to seeing everyone next month. We have again a very exciting program for next month's talk. We are connecting up with the COP26 in the UK, and that should be a fascinating session as well, where we're looking at trails and climate change. So thank you, everyone. Wishing you all a good day further if you're in that part of the world, and a good evening further if you're in that side of the world this evening, afternoon. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Good day and good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.